On a glittering evening in Genoa City, the chandeliers of the Newman ranch shimmered like diamonds scattered across a velvet sky as the elite of Wisconsin society gathered to celebrate Nikki Newman's birthday, an event befitting the reigning matriarch of the powerful Newman dynasty on The Young and the Restless. The guest list was curated with precision: business moguls, political figures, and the most influential families in town. Yet beneath the champagne toasts and string quartet melodies lingered the familiar tension that always followed the Newman name. Nikki Newman stood at the center of it all, radiant in a sapphire gown, her smile practiced but warm as she greeted friends and adversaries alike. To her right, ever watchful, was her husband, Victor Newman, the Black Knight himself, surveying the room with quiet authority. Their children, Victoria Newman, poised and calculating, Nick Newman, protective and wary, and Adam Newman, brooding at the bar, formed a fractured but united front for the evening. The mood was celebratory on the surface, but in Genoa City, celebration often served as a prelude to catastrophe. The party began with laughter and gentle nostalgia. Speeches flowed as easily as the vintage Bordeaux. Victoria praised her mother's resilience, recalling Nikki's battles with addiction and her unwavering devotion to family. Nick followed with a heartfelt tribute, crediting his mother's strength for shaping his moral compass. Even Adam, reluctant yet sincere, offered a toast that momentarily softened old wounds. For a fleeting hour, the Newman clan appeared whole. But outside, headlights cut through the darkness as a sleek car rolled up the gravel drive. Inside it sat a woman long accustomed to stirring chaos with precision, Diane Jenkins. Her return to Genoa City months earlier had already unsettled old alliances, but tonight she carried something far more explosive than gossip or revenge. She carried a secret powerful enough to fracture the Newman empire at its core. Diane entered the ranch with calculated grace, her presence drawing immediate whispers. Nikki's smile faltered only for a second before she masked her irritation. Victor's eyes narrowed. He had learned long ago never to underestimate Diane. The tension between them was historic, layered with betrayals and uneasy truces. Diane offered Nikki a gift wrapped in silver paper, her tone honeyed but edged with something sharper. "A birthday is about truth and reflection," she said lightly, her gaze flicking toward Victor. "And sometimes the greatest gift is honesty." Those words, subtle yet loaded, rippled through the nearby guests. Victor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. As the orchestra paused and the cake was wheeled into the grand hall, Diane stepped forward again, requesting a moment to honor Nikki. The audacity stunned the room into silence. Nikki hesitated but nodded, unwilling to appear rattled in her own home. Diane raised her glass, her voice clear and unwavering. She spoke of family legacies, of secrets buried to protect reputations, of children who grow up unaware of their true heritage. Each sentence landed like a measured strike. Victoria exchanged a wary glance with Nick. Adam's brow furrowed. Victor, sensing the trajectory, warned Diane quietly to choose her next words carefully. But Diane had not come to retreat. "In the spirit of truth," Diane declared, "I believe Nikki deserves to know that her husband has another child, one he's kept hidden from all of you." The words detonated in the ballroom. Gasps echoed against marble floors. Nikki's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering at her feet. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Victor's face hardened into stone, his voice dangerously calm as he accused Diane of fabricating lies. But Diane, anticipating resistance, produced documentation, DNA results, dates, and a name that sent shockwaves through the Newman siblings. The revelation was not a vague accusation, it was a meticulously substantiated claim. Victor Newman, titan of industry and self-appointed guardian of family honor, had fathered a child years ago during a discreet overseas business venture, and had ensured the secret remained buried. Nikki staggered back, her composure cracking. She demanded the truth from Victor, her voice trembling not with weakness but fury. Victoria's instincts kicked in immediately, stepping between her parents as if she could physically shield the family from implosion. Nick confronted Victor with raw disbelief, asking how he could preach loyalty while harboring such deception. Adam, whose own paternity history was fraught with pain, looked stricken, memories of being concealed and rejected flickering across his expression. The symmetry was cruel. Victor had once hidden Adam's existence from the world, and now history appeared to be repeating itself. Victor attempted to regain control, asserting that the matter was complex and rooted in circumstances meant to protect everyone involved. He accused Diane of exploiting a private situation for vengeance. Yet the evidence she held was undeniable. She described the mother, a woman who had declined public acknowledgement but whose child had recently sought answers. That child, Diane revealed, was now an adult and aware of their Newman lineage. The room buzzed with speculation. Who was this person? Where were they now? Had they been in Genoa City all along? Diane let the questions hang before delivering the final blow. The secret child was already in town. The announcement ignited chaos. Guests whispered frantically, some slipping out to avoid being caught in the fallout. Nikki's birthday cake remained untouched, candles flickering as if mocking the shattered celebration. Nikki confronted Victor with years of shared history, every promise, every vow, and demanded to know how he could betray her trust yet again. Victor insisted his silence had been an act of protection, claiming the child's mother had feared the ruthless scrutiny of the Newman name. But Nikki saw only deceit. Her heartbreak was visible, cutting deeper than anger. For decades she had endured Victor's schemes, rivalries, and manipulations, but this was personal. Victoria's pragmatic mind raced through corporate implications. A new Newman heir could destabilize succession plans at Newman Enterprises. Nick's concern centered on emotional fallout. He remembered too well the strain Adam's late arrival had placed on the family. Adam himself seemed torn between empathy for the hidden sibling and resentment at Victor's pattern of secrecy. The siblings, often divided, found common ground in their outrage. Diane watched the unraveling with a mixture of satisfaction and something almost reflective. Exposing Victor was both revenge and reckoning. As the night spiraled, the doors opened once more. A figure stepped inside, composed, wary, and unmistakably bearing the Newman intensity in their eyes. The murmurs ceased. Nikki's breath caught. Victor's expression shifted from fury to recognition. The secret child had arrived, drawn perhaps by inevitability. Their presence transformed speculation into reality. No longer an abstract accusation, the hidden heir stood before them, living proof of Victor's concealed past. The confrontation that followed was raw and unfiltered. The newcomer demanded acknowledgement, not wealth or power but truth. They spoke of growing up with unanswered questions, of a mother who guarded silence like armor. Victor's defenses faltered as he faced the human consequence of his decision. Nikki. By the time dawn threatened the horizon, Nikki's birthday had become legend for all the wrong reasons. The Newman family stood irrevocably altered. Trust lay fractured, alliances uncertain. Yet amid the devastation flickered a fragile possibility. Perhaps confronting the truth, however painful, could pave a path toward authenticity. Diane's revelation had indeed ruined the celebration, but it also forced the Newmans to confront the cost of secrecy. In Genoa City, where power and pride often eclipse vulnerability, the exposure of Victor's secret child marked a turning point, one that would echo through boardrooms and bedrooms alike, reshaping the legacy of the Newman dynasty for years to come. The silence that followed the secret child's entrance into the Newman ranch felt heavier than any accusation Diane could have delivered. The room, once glittering with laughter and champagne bubbles, now seemed to shrink around the stunned faces of Genoa City's most powerful family on the young and the restless. Every chandelier sparkled as if nothing had changed, yet everything had. Victor Newman, the man who controlled corporations, political favors, and destinies, stood motionless, staring at the living embodiment of a secret he had buried for decades. The newcomer's presence was undeniable. The resemblance was not merely physical, though the dark, piercing eyes and commanding posture were unmistakably Newman, it was something deeper. A quiet intensity, a contained fire, the kind that comes from growing up with unanswered questions. Nikki's voice trembled as she finally spoke. "Is it true?" she asked Victor, but her eyes remained fixed on the stranger. "Is this your child?" Victor exhaled slowly, the sound almost imperceptible, but in the silent ballroom it carried. "Yes," he said at last. "It is." The admission sent another ripple through the room. Nikki Newman felt as if the floor had dropped beneath her. This was not rumor or manipulation. This was fact. A living, breathing fact. Victoria Newman instinctively moved closer to her mother. Always the strategist, Her mind was already calculating implications, shares, board seats, inheritance structures. But beneath the executive instincts was a daughter's hurt. "How long have you known?" she demanded of her father. Victor did not flinch. "I've always known." That confession cut deeper than the revelation itself. Across the room, Nick Newman ran a hand through his hair, frustration written all over his face. "So you let us grow up thinking we knew our family, and all this time there was someone else." "And what?" Adam Newman interjected bitterly. "You were protecting us? Or protecting yourself?" Adam's voice carried a sharp edge of familiarity. He, more than anyone, understood what it meant to be hidden, to be inconvenient, to be a secret that disrupted the narrative. His gaze shifted to the newcomer, not hostile, not welcoming, but searching. Diane stood near the fireplace, arms folded lightly, observing the chaos she had unleashed. Diane Jenkins had not anticipated how emotionally volatile the moment would become. She had wanted exposure, accountability. But watching Nikki's devastation flicker into something quieter, resignation, perhaps, stirred a flicker of something unexpected in her. The secret child stepped forward. "My name is Daniel," they said evenly. "And I didn't come here for a fight. I came because I deserve to know where I come from." The simplicity of the statement silenced even Victor. Daniel explained that their mother had died months ago. Among her belongings had been letters, unsent, unsaid, but carefully preserved. Letters written by Victor. Letters that revealed a connection he had publicly denied. DNA testing had confirmed it. Daniel had wrestled with whether to confront the Newmans privately, but Diane had found them first. She had offered a choice: remain in the shadows or step into the light. Nikki's eyes snapped toward Diane. "You orchestrated this." "I gave him the truth," Diane replied coolly. "Something this family claims to value." Victor's fury simmered just beneath the surface. "You exploited a grieving person to settle a score." Daniel's voice cut in, firm. "No. I chose to come." The distinction mattered. Victoria's corporate instincts surged again. "If this is legitimate," she said carefully, "then there are legal ramifications." Nick shot her a look. "Is that really where your mind goes?" "It has to," Victoria snapped. "You think the board won't hear about this by morning? You think our competitors won't weaponize it?" Adam gave a humorless laugh. "She's not wrong." Nikki closed her eyes briefly, gathering strength. "Stop," she whispered. "Just stop." The family quieted. She turned to Daniel, studying him with a mixture of pain and compassion. "You didn't ask for this," she said softly. "None of this is your fault." Daniel nodded, emotion flickering at the edges of composure. "I know, but I won't be hidden anymore." Victor stepped closer, his voice gentler than anyone in the room expected. "I made choices," he admitted. "Choices I believed were necessary at the time. Your mother didn't want the scrutiny. She wanted you protected." "Protected from what?" Daniel challenged. "From you." That question hung like smoke. Nikki felt the weight of decades pressing on her chest. She had forgiven Victor for affairs, for betrayals, for ruthless decisions made in boardrooms and bedrooms alike. But this deception felt existential. It meant that for years, while she had fought for their marriage, there had been another life unfolding in parallel. "I stood by you," Nikki said, voice trembling now not with anger but heartbreak. "Through everything." Victor met her gaze. "And I have loved you through everything." "Love without truth isn't love," she replied. Those words pierced him. Guests had largely dispersed, leaving only the core family and a handful of stunned confidants. The birthday cake still sat untouched, candles melted into waxy puddles. The symbolism was almost cruelly theatrical. Victoria shifted into action mode. "We need to handle this privately," she said. "Damage control starts now." Nick bristled. "Maybe we should try being human first." Adam approached Daniel cautiously. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I know what it's like to feel like an outsider in your own bloodline." Daniel studied him. "And did it get easier?" Adam considered that. "No. But you stop waiting for permission to belong." The exchange did not go unnoticed by Victor. Nikki finally removed her diamond necklace, placing it carefully on a nearby table. The gesture felt symbolic, a shedding of armor. This was supposed to be a celebration, she said faintly. Instead, it's another chapter in the Newman saga. Diane stepped forward once more. Secrets don't stay buried forever. Victor's eyes blazed. You've made your point. Yes, she said. I have. But beneath the triumph in her voice was something else, perhaps the realization that detonating a bomb means standing in the blast radius. As the night deepened, decisions began to take shape. Victoria insisted on an immediate legal review of inheritance structures. Nick volunteered to talk privately with Daniel, offering at least one open door. Adam lingered near the newcomer, curiosity outweighing resentment. Victor faced Nikki alone in the grand hallway once the others dispersed. You humiliated me, she said quietly. I never intended for you to find out this way. But you intended for me not to find out at all. He had no answer to that. Upstairs, Victoria was already on the phone with legal counsel. In the study, Nick and Daniel spoke in hushed tones about childhood memories and the strange gravity of the Newman name. In the garden, Adam stared into the darkness, recognizing the familiar taste of upheaval. Diane prepared to leave, pausing at the doorway. For a moment, she looked back at the fractured family. Revenge had been part of her motivation, yes, but so had a twisted sense of justice. Victor had controlled narratives for too long. Outside, the press had begun to gather. Rumors traveled fast in Genoa City. By sunrise, headlines would speculate about a hidden heir, corporate instability, marital collapse. Inside, Nikki returned to the ballroom alone. She approached the ruined cake, touching the melted wax with her fingertip. Tears welled, not loud, not dramatic, but steady. Daniel entered quietly. I'm sorry, he said. She turned to him, seeing not scandal but vulnerability. You didn't ruin my birthday, she said gently. Secrets did. That acknowledgement shifted something. Victor watched from a distance, torn between instinct to control and dawning understanding that some situations cannot be commanded into submission. For perhaps the first time in years, he was not orchestrating events, he was reacting to them. The Newman Empire had survived hostile takeovers, kidnappings, betrayals, and corporate wars. But this was different. This was internal, intimate, a fracture in the foundation. As dawn's first light crept through the windows, Nikki stood between her husband and his newly acknowledged child. The celebration had indeed turned catastrophic, but catastrophe can birth transformation. The question lingering over the Newman ranch was no longer whether Victor had a secret child. It was whether the Newman family could survive the truth. Morning in Genoa City did not arrive gently. It arrived with flashing cameras at the gates of the Newman ranch and headlines already circulating online about the implosion that had turned the young and the restless into must-see drama yet again. By 7 a.m., speculation about Victor Newman's secret child had eclipsed Nikki's birthday entirely. The celebration was a footnote. The scandal was the story. Inside the ranch, the atmosphere felt like the aftermath of a storm. Staff moved quietly, avoiding eye contact. The remnants of the party, wilted flowers, half-empty glasses, wax-stained linen, were being cleared away as if erasing the evidence might undo the damage. But nothing could erase what had been said. Nikki Newman had not slept. She stood at the window in a silk robe, watching reporters gather beyond the iron gates. Her reflection in the glass looked older, not physically, but emotionally, like someone who had just recalculated the narrative of her entire marriage. Behind her, Victor Newman entered quietly. You should rest, he said. Don't tell me what I should do, Nikki replied, her voice calm but distant. Victor paused. He was used to confrontation, raised voices, dramatic ultimatums. This quiet restraint unsettled him more. I never stopped loving you, he said carefully. Nikki turned slowly. Love isn't the issue. Control is. Downstairs, Victoria Newman had already transformed the dining room into a command center. Legal pads covered the table. Her phone buzzed non-stop. She had spoken with corporate counsel, PR advisors, and 2 board members before sunrise. We have to get ahead of this, she told her brothers firmly as they joined her. Nick Newman looked exhausted but resolute. Maybe instead of getting ahead of it, we just tell the truth. And let investors panic. Victoria shot back. Adam Newman leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. The investors aren't the only ones panicking. Victoria glanced at him sharply. This isn't about your personal trauma, Adam. He smirked faintly. Isn't it? Seems like history repeating itself. Upstairs, Daniel, Victor's newly acknowledged child, stood alone in a guest room that felt too grand, too unfamiliar. The weight of the Newman legacy pressed in from every gold-framed portrait lining the hallway. He had imagined this confrontation for months, but imagination had not prepared him for the emotional gravity of it. A knock sounded. Nick stepped inside. You holding up? Daniel gave a half-shrug. I've had quieter introductions. Nick almost smiled. You get used to chaos in this family. Do you? Daniel asked genuinely. Nick considered that. No. You just learn where you stand in it. The conversation shifted from polite small talk to something more vulnerable. Daniel spoke about growing up with questions, about watching other kids with fathers who showed up to games and graduations. He admitted he had Googled Victor Newman years ago, staring at articles about corporate takeovers and philanthropic galas, wondering if the man in those headlines ever thought about him. Nick listened without interruption. It was impossible not to hear echoes of Adam's childhood in those words. Meanwhile, Victoria convened a private meeting with Victor in his study. You should have told me, she said bluntly once the door closed. Victor remained standing behind his desk. It was not your burden to carry. It is now, she replied. Victoria's frustration wasn't just personal, it was strategic. Do you understand what this means? A new heir changes everything. The board will demand clarity. Shareholders will question succession. We've spent years stabilizing the company. Victor's expression hardened. The company will endure. That's not what I'm worried about, she shot back. I'm worried about fractures inside the family spilling into the business. Victor studied his daughter. For all her anger, he saw concern, not just for Newman Enterprises, but for Nikki, for the fragile balance that had just shattered.